William Blake was a man who many considered insane. His paintings were not well accepted in his time, as people believed they were disconnected from reality. Blake didn't just paint what he saw with his physical eyes, he depicted his visions, his unique way of interpreting the world. He was able to portray the creation of the universe in a completely different way, according to his own spiritual and artistic understanding. Although we still don't know if he was right, many people today share his perception of the world. In this video, we will explore how William Blake saw the world. We will analyze his paintings, their symbolism, and the extraordinary visions for which he was accused of being mad. Was Blake truly insane, or was he seeing something we are unable to perceive? Stay until the end to find out. William Blake was a British artist born in 1757. He dedicated his life to poetry, engraving, and painting. However, his work was largely ignored and rejected by society during his time due to his unique style, which focused on creation stemming from his inner world and mystical journey. Ironically, as has often happened in the history of art, he is now recognized as one of the most important artists in England. While most people saw answers in the external world, Blake delved into his own mysteries, exploring his profound inner self and walking the paths of imagination to discover the true essence of being. Blake argued that we do not live in a material world made of objects. Each person lives in their own world, in their own mind, in their own imagination. From an early age, Blake's parents had to adapt to his visions. At just 4 years old, he claimed to see the prophet Ezekiel under his bed. By the age of 9, he avoided the crowded, smoky, chaotic streets of the city and would instead take long walks to the south, where he was surrounded by nature and tranquility. But one of these peaceful walks turned out to be different. While walking, he suddenly saw one of the trees in the area light up with golden hues, as if glowing with a magical aura, and he was intrigued. Blake vividly saw angels hanging from the branches of the tree, radiating flashes of light like stars. He was not frightened. On the contrary, he was captivated by the sight. For him, it was a divine sign of pure beauty, and he ran home joyfully to tell his parents what he had witnessed. From a young age, Blake began reading the Bible, an activity he continued throughout his life, with much of his work inspired by this book. Can you imagine how difficult it must have been for his parents to raise a child like him? So unique, and let's not forget, this was over 250 years ago. Most people would not have been prepared for such a challenge. However, his parents supported him in their own way. They did not clip the wings of his imagination and allowed him to be himself. When Blake decided he didn't want to attend school and preferred to learn at home instead, they supported him. His numerous visions and experiences became the foundation of his work. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up, till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. For Blake, the way we perceive the world depends on our individual perception, not on something external. There are days when the world appears golden, glowing with other colors, with a special aura, yet there are other days when the world seems unchanged. But which of these perceptions is real? According to Blake, our inner world is the external world. We live in our imagination. The power of imagination allows us to bring the unconscious dimension of reality into the world, unifying the two poles of our mind. Blake quickly realized that the world was not merely a place of reasoning, logic, and rigid structures. It went far beyond that. Humankind was trapped in its own limited vision of the world, confined by fear and a profane worldview that provided false security. This created numerous problems in society, as it was built on false foundations. Blake was ahead of his time, opposing slavery, racism, tyranny, and any authority that sought to dominate others. He also strongly criticized the Industrial Revolution, recognizing that it would turn humans into machines, disconnect them from their true essence, and sever their connection to nature, and he wasn't wrong. Blake, a mystic in search of spiritual truth, believed that this truth could be achieved through an inner journey of introspection into our own being. He wanted us to understand that we originate from a spiritual realm where we are born as free spirits, but at some point, we became imprisoned in the material world. Blake tells us that the way to free ourselves from this cage is through imagination. That is the tool he offers as the path to liberation. Before we dive back into the analysis, let me take just a few seconds to share something you're going to love. For the first and only time this year, starting right now, the entire store is on sale, allowing you to collect your favorite painting with a 20% discount. This discount is valid only until December 1st, making it the one and only chance to enjoy a discount in our store. This is the perfect moment to grab your favorite painting and make it yours forever. Shipping is free worldwide. You'll find the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. In 1787, a life-changing event occurred for Blake, the death of his younger brother, whom he had cared for over 15 days. Blake claimed that at the moment of his brother's death, he saw his spirit leave the body, clapping as it ascended. In that instant, he realized that the dead are actually more present within us after death than they ever were while alive. So much so that he continued speaking with his brother regularly. He conversed with the dead through his imagination. Blake believed that simply remembering them was enough to bring them back to life, as his brother lived on vividly in his imagination. At one point, he said, "I know that our departed friends are more truly with us than when they were apparent to our mortal part. 13 years ago, I lost a brother, and with his spirit, I converse daily and hourly in the spirit, and see him in my memory, in the region of my imagination. I hear his advice, and even now write according to his dictation." Blake's art was not only misunderstood, but also largely ignored. In 1809, he held an exhibition of his works, which hardly anyone attended. One critic who did view his art dismissed him as an unfortunate lunatic who should be grateful not to be confined due to his madness. For years, Blake's work languished in obscurity until much later, when he was finally recognized as one of England's great artists. His work uniquely fused a mystical perspective with artistic vision, perceiving a reality beyond the material world, something scientists of the time were just beginning to explore. William Blake's most famous painting, and the one many consider his masterpiece, is The Ancient of Days, created as the frontispiece for his 1794 work, Europe a Prophecy. The image depicts a divine figure named Urizen, kneeling within a fiery circle and extending into the void with a compass. In Blake's mythology, Urizen symbolizes reason, law, and the limitations of logic, starkly contrasting with imagination, which Blake celebrated as the essence of humanity. This painting encapsulates Blake's critique of the Enlightenment's excessive emphasis on rationality, portraying it as something divine, yet inherently flawed. Blake's creative process for this painting was as revolutionary as its content. Using his unique relief etching technique, he harmoniously combined text and image, applying watercolor by hand to ensure each version of the work was unique. This innovative method evoked medieval illuminated manuscripts and allowed Blake to maintain complete control over his artistic production. Urizen, though heroically depicted with Michelangelo-like musculature, is filled with ambiguity. The compass he holds seems to extend from his fingers, symbolizing how rationality, while essential for creation, can also imprison and dehumanize. The circle in which he kneels is incomplete, suggesting Urizen's imperfection and the insufficiency of reason without imagination. His posture, leaning into the void, conveys both power and vulnerability, as if he is about to fall into the darkness he seeks to control. This portrayal resonates in other works by Blake, such as Newton, where he also critiques the dominance of reason. For Blake, figures like Isaac Newton were adversaries. He viewed them as individuals who saw the world solely through physics, scientists, and materialists. What particularly repulsed him about Newton was his optical theory, which acknowledged only the physical eye absorbing particles of light, while ignoring the spiritual eye, through which Blake experienced countless mystical visions since childhood. Thus, he chose to depict Newton in this way, naked, seated in an impossible pose, on a rocky surface resembling the ocean floor, surrounded by algae, corals, and mollusks, absorbed in his theories and oblivious to the beauty around him. Both Urizen and Newton illustrate how an excess of rationality can lead to isolation and spiritual blindness. After all this analysis, I'd like to ask, what do you think of this artist? Do you believe he was truly mad, or does his philosophy make sense? During his time, his ideas were dismissed as madness, but today, many of them seem to resonate deeply. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss 2 videos like this every week. See you in the next one.